السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. ناظرین, Darsequran.com کی ایک اور نشست کے ساتھ ہم حاضر ہیں, اور یہ نشست بہت زیادہ اہمیت کی حامل ہے. اس نشست کے اندر ہم اس موضوع کو چھیڑیں گے کہ جو موضوع ہماری ایک دکھتی رگ ہے, کہ جس کو جب بھی ہاتھ لگتا ہے تو ہمارے درد تازہ ہو جاتا ہے, غم تازہ ہو جاتا ہے. اور یہ ایسا ایک سانحہ ہے جو کہ ہماری قوم کے اوپر ایک دھبہ ہے, اور ایسا ایک واقعہ ہے کہ جس کو ہم کبھی نہیں بھلا سکتے. آج جس موضوع پہ ہم بات کر رہے ہیں وہ ڈاکٹر عافیہ صدیقی کا موضوع ہے. ناظرین, آج جو میرے مہمان ہیں ایک برطانوی وکیل ہیں جنہوں نے امریکہ میں سزائے موت کے خلاف آواز اٹھائی اور گوانتانامو کے حوالے سے کافی نام رکھتے ہیں, اور اس وقت ڈاکٹر عافیہ صدیقی کا کیس لڑ رہے ہیں. تو میں اپنے مہمان کو خوش آمدید کہتا ہوں. ویلکم اینڈ تھینک یو فار بینگ ہیئر.
My pleasure.
We are going to start with your introduction, your journey before taking the case of Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, and we are going to discuss how your journey came into this, path where you take the cases of these people.
So, well, I went to America when I was very young, when I was 19, and it was because I was obsessed with the death penalty. I think the death penalty is a terrible, terrible thing. I realize some people disagree with me, but I'm sorry about that. I'm never going to agree with them. And so I went there, I was going to write about it, and in the end, instead, I discovered these poor people in the richest country on earth have no right to a lawyer when they're on death row. So I went and got a law degree at Columbia in New York to do that. And so for many years, from 1984 to 2001, that was all I did, was represent people on death row. Then along comes 9/11. Now, the reason we have the death penalty is we like to blame in America a small group of young African American people for all of our problems, for crime, for drugs, for everything. Then along comes 9/11, and we decide we hate Muslim men with beards. I'm sorry about it, but that's
then came the wave of Islamophobia and everything.
Totally, and it was all this terrible Islamophobia. And the thing about Guantanamo that a lot of people don't know is when it was first opened in January of 2002, everyone faced the death penalty. All the people in Guantanamo were looking at being executed. And so, to me, this was a blindingly obvious thing to do. So I thought, we'll sue President Bush, and we're much more fun than that. So I called all my friends around America, all the liberal people I knew who did my work, and said, we need to sue this Bush guy and put a stop to Guantanamo. And I was really surprised that I had totally underestimated the emotion of America after 9/11. I grew up in Britain. We have wars every other decade. We've done it for 1,000 years. The Americans have never done this. The Americans have only been attacked on their territory 3 times. Yeah. And you can tell the exact date, 9/11, December the 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, and then 1812 when the British burnt the White House. Yeah. And so this had an enormous impact on America, and I couldn't find anybody in my community who was willing to go after Bush for this. And I found a couple of people finally, and so February the 19th, 2002, we sued the government. And, I didn't, I didn't have a TV, right? I didn't ever watch television. And so the TV wanted someone to justify what we were doing. I'm fine, I'll come and do it. I feel very passionately about this. So I went on TV in America. In 5 minutes, I was accused of being a traitor 13 times. I got death threats like I've never heard before. And it was just shocking. So, that obviously just pisses me off. And so I thought, right, you convinced me now. We really got to help these guys. So, we went from there, and we went to the Supreme Court. And for all the flaws of America, the power that I have as an American lawyer is amazing. And, I get to sue the president whenever I want. And I've sued the president 88 times, and I've only lost once.
Really?
And I'm very bitter about the case I lost. And I'm going to turn that around. So that gives you immense power. And so we take this incredibly unpopular thing where all Americans then were hating Muslim people. The Europeans were just as bad. And we take it to the US Supreme Court, and we win, because they got to just follow the law. It's not like what's happening here in Pakistan, where they're trying to change everything just so the military can have their own way. They in America, they do that. I mean, not always. They have their flaws. But so that was that. That's how I got into it. And I had to do it because my mom, who bless her, she died last year, but she always told me that I am what we refer to as no PWM. You know what that means?
No, I don't know.
It means old privileged white male. And that means I'm very privileged.
I cannot comment on that.
No, you can. You can. I used to be just a PWM, but now I'm old. And so, you know, my mum used to tell me my duty is to look around for the people who are being hated and get between them and the ones doing the hatred. And I think that's a really good principle in life. And I have to do it, otherwise she'd strike me dead from heaven.
So let's talk about from the beginning. How did you come to know about Dr. Aafia?
Aafia.
And what was the situation at that time about her case? Was there even a case at that time? And what was your first reaction or first response to that? And specifically when you met her the first time?
Well, my big regret is that I wasn't involved in this case back in 2008, 2009, because I think it would have been very different. And I heard about Aafia years ago. I was doing all these Guantanamo cases, including a lot from Pakistan. And what happened was I was down here when we were just getting the Rabbani brothers and Saifullah Paracha back from Guantanamo. And, we get them free. Really happy to do that. That was, and I'm being stupid as usual. I think I've just got rid of 3 people I'm representing. I've now got time to do something else. So I was approached by Fawzia. And I'd met Fawzia before. And again, I regret not agreeing to help back then when I was just massively busy with Guantanamo. But she asked me, I was going to Texas on a death case, and she asked me if I'd stop in and see her sister. Well, of course I'm going to, what's the big deal? So I agreed to do this. This was January of last year, and I went to see Aafia. And, when you meet this poor woman, after everything, when you really learn what happened to her, it's just not possible to say no, right? It's certainly not possible if you've got Dr. Fawzia trying to get you to do it. Because that woman, if you're ever in trouble, you got to have her as your sister because she's going to get you out. So, she persuaded me, and, I'm really, really happy that she did because it's a great privilege to help Aafia.
And how was your first time when you met Dr. Aafia? How was your meeting with her, and what was your reaction? A lot of inhumane things, you cannot even imagine the things that you're, also you are, taking the cases of everyone who is in Guantanamo. So you are familiar with those things, but as a female who's there and for no reason, what was your...
Well, look, everyone in Guantanamo, almost everyone was there for no reason. We have so far exonerated 97% of the people in Guantanamo. So everyone's there for no reason. Second, everyone's been tortured in Guantanamo for no reason. So that's not anything strange. It is different that Aafia is a woman, but frankly, torture of a woman is, we shouldn't torture men either. The thing that's different that gets me, and I think this is true for all your watchers, but I'm a father, right? I've got a son. I don't think I really understood what the word love meant until I had a child myself. And the idea that they would take her children and, drop one of them apparently on his head and kill him, but they won't admit to that, marry him and take her all the way up to Afghanistan and forcibly adopt her into a white Christian family on the principle that being a white Christian American is apparently better than being a Pakistani Muslim. Just wacko. But, actually the third one is in some ways weirdest. You can understand perhaps an accident, causing the death of Suleiman. I don't think if they did. You can understand the crazy Christian notion that you can't go to heaven unless you're Christian. But what you can't understand is why they took Ahmed, 6 years old, American child, the CIA takes him and puts him in prison and calls him Ihsan Ali. I mean, that's crazy. And so when I learned about that, when you see Aafia, of course, what happened to her children is what really, really traumatizes her. She's been through torture, she's been through awful things, but what they did to her children, and you understand that, I understand that, everyone understands that. And that's what pissed me off the most about this, and that's why, I'm not going to stop until we get her out of there.
That's very, horrible, and the trauma that she would have faced, and also the kids that, they have been all, through all of this. So there are one thing that I would want to clear through this in a podcast interview is that a lot of people in Pakistan and all over the world, they think that, her case started, her journey, the story started from Ghazni. And they are, they told on the international media, national media, and that she tried to kill U.S. soldiers, and that's why she, got into prison and everything. Is that true or not?
No, of course it's not true. Now, I've been to Ghazni 3 times now, and I'm planning to go again. I got lots of witnesses. What they say happened in Ghazni, I'm going to use a legal term here, is total bullshit, right? I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Pardon my language. It just didn't happen.
Fine.
It didn't happen. But, of course, that's actually not the real issue. The narrative here is all about what happened before March the 30th, 2003, and what happened after. What happened before is why the Americans and the Pakistani government under Musharraf made such a colossal mistake about it. I know the answer now, because I've got an American Secret Service agent who's told me everything. And, that's going to come out in due course, of course. But then what really matters is what happened in 2003, because what happened to Aafia is not the word that sometimes people use. It's not that she was arrested or detained. She was kidnapped, and she was kidnapped with her children. So honestly, it doesn't matter what happened in Ghazni, because she was a kidnapped victim. Under American law, if she'd been kidnapped, she's able to shoot anyone she wants to try and escape. That's not what happened, of course, but that's the law. But the narrative is what was done to her, and then why she ended up in Ghazni. And that narrative is what happened to her children, what happened to her, where she was taken. I've spent an awful lot of time in Afghanistan learning and getting witnesses to her torture. I've got 9 people now who saw her being tortured in Bagram, including, on this latest trip, the one that really thrills me, is I've got a guy who saw her in the underground secret detention dark prison in Bagram, where the really bad stuff went on. And I've also got a line on the women's prison she was in, where they raped her, in Afghanistan. And these were obviously not the Afghans today. It's not the current government. It was the American-backed government. And they were doing it for the CIA. So all of that is crucial to understand what's going on here. For 5 years. And I've got a magazine here with me that I got recently. I'm so excited. You'll have to take a picture of it. That is a Discover magazine, where when they were saying in the ridiculous little show trial about Ghazni that she had written stuff about weapons of mass destruction with this crazy thing about shooting down satellites. Now, do you mind me asking you if you know how to shoot down a satellite?
I don't.
You're not really a very good extremist, are you? I mean, obviously. I don't know. I'm a scientist, right? My A-levels were physics, chemistry, maths, and further maths. I could no more shoot down a satellite than I could shoot that drone down. So they had her write this thing out about how to shoot down a satellite on a page of a magazine called Discover, which I just got a copy of. I sent off for it. And the great thing is, what she wrote down that is meant to be her saying how to shoot down a satellite is a direct copying of what's in the magazine on a page of the magazine, which was published in December 2007 only in America in paper. It wasn't online. So what does that tell you? It tells you the CIA brought that document to Afghanistan and had her do exactly what she told me the first time I saw her, which was that they made her write this nonsense out. So all of this is all the sort of garbage that you hear about. But in the end, you know, this case is not about what happened in Ghazni. But we should remember this. There were hundreds of thousands of people killed in Afghanistan. In the incident in Ghazni, if you even accepted what the American prosecutors said, which you don't, and I can tell you why, but if you did, here's a woman who's been kidnapped, who has the right to shoot an American soldier if she wants to, actually. She didn't do it, but she has the right to. The only person who gets shot is Aafia Siddiqui, twice in the stomach. Yet she's the one who's in a prison in America for 86 years. This is madness. And so then, of course, I go to Ghazni and I discover what really happened. And in general terms, I'm not going to tell you the details because I have an agreement with the government, your government, that I'm not going to spread their dirty laundry around entirely until we try to get her out this November. But what really happened was this. When the Americans wanted to get rid of her in 2008, they just wanted to get rid of her. Part of this was the problem here in Karachi, that Fawzia, bless her, and her mum had made such a big deal of Aafia's name that the last thing that the Musharraf government, who was still in power then, wanted was her Aafia to come back here and say what happened to her, right? So they wanted her dead. And what they did was they told her that she could go to Ghazni, she could go there with her son, who they gave to her, although no one was quite clear who was who because they'd all been tortured. And if she went to Ghazni and sat outside the Khalid bin Walid Mosque, then they'd give her back her daughter. And then she could go off back to Pakistan. So she did what she was told. She went in a van there. In the van with her was a Pakistani agent. I got a photograph of him, yeah. And he had a bag full of stuff they were going to plant on her. And they called in, before she even went there, they called in a suicide bomber plot. They dressed Ahmed in a jacket in July, in the middle of summer in Afghanistan, a coat with 4 big pockets full of fruit. And that was designed, obviously, to make him look like a suicide bomber. And he was only 11, right? And then she sits outside this mosque for 7 hours. If she was going to blow up a mosque or go kill the governor of Ghazni or poison the water supply or something, she wouldn't have sat there for 7 hours. I find this guy, when I go to Ghazni, a guy called Muhammad Ajmal Mohammadi, lovely guy. He's the greatest hero of this story. He's a tailor. And because he's done his tailoring here in Pakistan, he speaks Urdu. No one else can speak to her, but she only speaks Urdu and English. So people try to talk to her, they can't talk to her. And so he goes out and he talks to her and he's, it's dangerous, this is a war zone, it's 2008, maybe you should go stay with my auntie around the corner. And she says, no, I'm waiting for them to deliver my daughter. And so he's there when the Afghan National Police show up with the suicide bomber thing. And they've all got their AK-47s, there's 40 of them. And they're just going to shoot her, right? But Ajmal Mohammadi stands between them and the guns. And I love this guy. I just saw him this week in Afghanistan.
You were in Ghazni?
Yeah, I was.
Recently.
Yeah, I was there last week with him, but I saw him for dinner in Kabul too. And Mohammadi was the one who stopped this, and he said, she's not a suicide bomber, you can't do this. And so he saved her life. And then she was taken to the ANP headquarters, and that's where the incident happened. But what really happened, and we can prove this now, because I've now talked to all the Afghan National Police who were there. Not all of them, I'm going to get them all in due course. There are 250 of them, I can get lots of witnesses. Is that she's in a room behind a curtain on a bed, and she hears voices, and she hears American voices. And poor Aafia, she's just been tortured for 5 years. She thinks they're coming to get her. So she peeks around the curtain to see who it is, and one of the Americans sees her and says she's on the loose and shoots her in the stomach, right? None of this other nonsense about a gun. They shot her. Nothing happened. They then discover she's an unarmed woman, and oh my goodness, we're better. So they make up a story. But the story they make up, what's so fantastic about it, is they have 2 holes in the wall, right? There's meant to be where she grabbed the M4 rifle. Do you know where the safety catch is on an M4?
No, I don't.
No, that's because you're a useless terrorist. So she grabs the M4 rifle, supposedly flicks off the safety catch, bam, bam, 2 holes in the wall.
I expected her to know all of that, and
well, but the little flaw is this, that I've got a video from that room earlier in the day. There were 2 holes in the wall before this ever happened. And there's no shell casings from an M4, there's no bullets from an M4, there's no fingerprints on the gun, there's no gunshot residue on her or the curtain. It just didn't happen, right? And when you lie, it's really tough because then people come along and check whether you lied, and these people lied. So the truth is, all of this stuff is, I think, as I said, the word bullshit. It just didn't happen. But that doesn't mean they're going to admit it, because they've committed this horrible abuse of her. Yeah, there we go. But we'll get her out. We're going to get it out.
should we expect her to be home soon?
Absolutely not. I don't want her in Pakistan. I don't want her coming near this country, frankly.
Really?
No. It's not good for her. You know, she would have a really difficult time in Pakistan. She needs a lot of medical care. She needs a lot of help. She's been traumatized like no one I've ever met. We need to, and my whole plan with Dr. Fawzia is to get her to a third country, and we're talking to third countries, and get her somewhere where she can get the treatment she needs, where she can be totally left alone with people who she loves, and not to be made a spectacle of in Pakistan. And we need that for two reasons. One is she needs it. She's not in a condition to confront the media or anyone. And I'm honestly speaking, not a big fan of the way the military intervenes in Pakistan politics. They need to get out of politics, right? But I wouldn't think that they would necessarily behave properly towards Aafia. And it's good for everyone if Aafia is somewhere safe and somewhere else. And I think they would want that, frankly. I don't think they want her here either. So I think that's what we need to do.
Can we have a date or like a timeline for, you know, when this case will be resolved?
Well, I very much hope it'll be resolved by January the 20th of next year.
Hopefully.
But I think that's, you know, I'd never promise it. It's a big battle to get that. So that's plan A. Plan B is, I've got many plan Bs. You know, we just sued the prison. We make the prison a much better place. I hate what they're doing there. You know, she's been raped in the prison she's in now. 13 guards in that prison have been convicted of rape, including a Christian minister, if you'll believe it. So we need to shut that prison down, frankly. But then I'm planning, I've been in New York 2 or 3 times, because we'll definitely bring litigation there. The thing your government needs to be afraid of is if they don't get her out with me now, I'm going to have a 3-week public hearing in New York where we publish everything that happened. And I don't think your government wants it. I don't think the CIA wants it. And I'm going to have a federal judge who's pissed off because he was lied to at the trial. And so, you know, I'd love it. I'd have a great time, you know. But that's not what we want, really. We want to resolve this now.
So what is their attitude towards this case, like the American government and the court system there, the judges and the jury? What kind of like their attitude towards this case? Are they
the Americans all think she's a terrorist, right? Because at her trial, the CIA had presented whatever they wanted to present. The defense presented nothing. All the witnesses who came to the trial were ones the Americans brought there. They gave a couple of Afghans green cards to come testify. No one was there for Aafia. I'm the first American who's been to Afghanistan to really find the evidence. And, you know, I can do it because I represented half the Taliban when they were in Guantanamo, and, you know, I get along with them very well, which is great. And they're really cooperative. The Taliban government is fabulously helpful on this, which I'm very grateful for. So, you know, this is our first chance to do it because the jury and the Americans have never heard the truth. So they all think she's a Al-Qaeda terrorist, which is total nonsense. And it's one of the great issues is I think she's probably the most famous person in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And in America, no one's ever heard of her. And so this is an incredible dissonance between America and the world of Islam. And that's why we just got to educate them a bit, don't we?
So that's all in the past now. And you have been following up with this case and going to the trials and everything. So what has been done and what is the progress in the trials and the, you know, in the American court? So what is the progress so far?
Well, this is what really what I'm concerned with is what you're going to do and what your viewers are going to do. So right now, we've got several options to get her out of there. The most pressing is this. I've filed a clemency petition, which is amazingly thick, which puts an awful lot of the evidence out there. Not all of it, but most of it. And we need Biden. President Biden has 10 weeks between November the 5th, when the election is, where someone gets elected, either Trump or Harris. Biden remains president for 10 weeks to January the 20th. So he has the power of the presidency, but none of the responsibility, really. He can do what's right then. So we need him to grant clemency. And the arguments are multiple. One is what really happened. The fact is she was tortured. What happened to her 2 little American children. All of that stuff. What's happened to her in prison, which I'll detail in a minute. But also what's going on in Gaza and places like that, America has a very bad reputation, I think you'll agree, in the Muslim community right now. We need to show some good faith, right? And Biden needs to do that, and I think he actually wants to. Biden also lost 2 children himself, so he empathizes with someone in Aafia's situation. And he really wants to draw a line under the war on terror. And so one way he can do that is by letting Aafia go. So I really want your viewers to write to the White House, and we'll put the address up there. And they can
write that on the screen.
And put it on the screen. And I want your viewers to write to President Joe Biden at the White House and be nice. Don't be nasty about this. Just say, look, the quality of mercy is not strained. Quote a few Quranic verses about how we need mercy in this and how this is going to be a step towards solving the antagonisms between the West and the world of Islam. And I think we have a pretty good chance if the Pakistan government strongly backs us, which is what they need to do.
We're going to conclude this on that. Hopefully, you succeed in this, and we also benefit from that, bringing her home. And hopefully it happens soon, and all our governments, collapse and everything. So thanks for your time, and thanks for being here. I know you're on a very tight schedule, but I just grabbed you, snatched you from
I'm
there.
glad you did, and thank you very much anyhow.
Thanks for being here. नाज़रीन, ये कुछ हक़ाइक़ हैं जो हमने आपके सामने रखे हैं, और ये जिस तरह से क्लाइव ने के सामने हमारी बात रखी है कि कुछ चीज़ें हमारे करने की भी हैं, कुछ चीज़ें हमारे आवाम के जो हम ये समझते हैं कि हमारे हाथ में कोई ताकत नहीं है, लेकिन हमारे हाथ में भी ताकत है कि जहाँ पे हम जो चीज़ अपना हिस्सा डाल सकते हैं उस हिस्से को हमने डालना है। और जिस तरीक़े से इन्होंने बताया कि कहाँ पे ईमेल करने हैं, वहाँ पे हमने ईमेल करने हैं, वो आपके सामने स्क्रीन पे आ जाएगा। और दुआ अल्लाह से ये है कि ये मामला जिस तरह से ये बता रहे हैं, ये मामला हल हो और ये मामला जल्द से जल्द अपने अख्ताम पे पहुँचे, डॉक्टर आफिया अपने चाहने वालों के पास पहुँचे, उस अज़ियतनाक ज़िंदगी से बाहर निकलें। इसी के साथ हम प्रोग्राम का अख्ताम करते हैं। तो बहुत ख्याल रखिएगा। अपने मेज़बान अरसलान अहमद को इजाज़त दीजिए। अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।
www.Darsequran.com